Veterans Broadcast Network, this is Roll Call. What role did you play in your call to duty?
You're listening to Veterans Roll Call.
I'm Kenney DeCamp.
And I'm Nadine Noki.
Here we are. Welcome, one and all. I love that music. That always gets me stretching. It's a good reveille in figuring out what my roll call was back in those days. I'm glad you're all here with us today. Make sure you have your pencil and paper again ready. Some people have been asking for a couple of those hotline numbers all over, so I'll be bringing those up to you. I'm in the studio tonight by myself. Nadine, I think you're on the phone with me.
I am here. I do not hear anything, but I am here. Okay,
there you are. We talked first show about some of those VSOs, which I just recently learned about too. I think I'll ask my guests if they had heard anything about a VSO before. And then we'll talk about a few of those things and how they relate to your transitioning out and how you live your veteran civilian life after that major transition. You know, it could be extremely difficult, whether any part of the military, naval, air service, whatever, getting out and all of a sudden now figuring out, well, what's my life going to be? Do I take my MOS, that special military operational specialty that I had, my job, and do I turn it into what I'll continue to do? Such as with me, I started as a medic, went into the orthopedic specialty world, got offered a commission as we were making these orthopedic specialists the physician's assistants program. And I got out and went into helping the American Association of Physicians Assistant organize itself and become accredited back in the 70s. So I took my MOS and actually made it work for so many years, and then gradually I got out of it and went more into some show business and educational levels. And I don't know if Nadine could hear me and she's able to also mention something. Okay. Anyway, our guests tonight are going to be a very unique man that I've met here in Sarasota, Florida. Actually, both of our guests are from Sarasota tonight. Gene Jones, who was Air Force, a very wonderful character because he's one of the beloved veterans of our community for all that he has done for veterans. And that's what we'll be talking a little bit about, not only what his role was in the service, but how unique his role has become for veterans today. And I think you'll find that an extremely interesting story. And then a little while back, I met a man named Alan Vada, and Alan was at a wonderful book signing event that a friend of mine also was attending, and I got to talking with him because it turns out he's a Navy man, and he's had this wonderful book that had an exciting cover on it, and it's Real Stories from a Nuclear Submariner. So we're going to be up in the air, we're going to be on the ground, and we're going to be underwater all night tonight. One of the questions, too, for you veterans getting out, or those of you that are already out and still are trying to work with your benefits and claims, try to find out what priority group you're in. I'd like to bring on Gene Jones. He's, I know, a resident of Sarasota. And, Gene, are you there with us now? Mid, you got him on?
I certainly am, Kenny. I'm right here.
Okay, so tell us about your, how did you decide to join the Air Force and when?
Well, I was one of those persons that I was a college student during the Vietnam War, and I was one of those kids that was really unable to pay for my college, and so I dropped out of college, and what that meant in those days was that you were likely to be drafted.
Yep.
And So I talked to an Air Force recruiter, and I thought that there were some possibilities in the Air Force. And Kenny, I must say that it turned out for me to be just a special experience, because my entire period spent in the service was gratifying, and I also was lucky in the sense, this is hard to believe, but in those days, and I assume it may still happen, but at that time, the Air Force, if they needed a skill that you had or thought they could develop, they would send you to college. So when I transitioned out of basic training, I found myself right back in college.
Wow.
Which was really one of the best deals that you can imagine, because I was a young man, 18 years old, and they sent me to Syracuse University, a premier university. And so I was up there for a year and enjoyed that a lot. And then after a tech school, I had the privilege of serving for a couple of years in Japan. And that was a terrific experience, because, I grew up as a Florida boy. I've hardly been out of the state of Florida, so I didn't see a whole lot of the world until I got in the Air Force. And the first time I was ever on an airplane was in the Air Force. And so I ended up in Japan, and it just turned out to be a wonderful experience. And so after the Air Force, I actually, because of the college that I was able to pick up that far behind my class, so I graduated from college, and then went to law school and moved to Sarasota, practiced law here in Sarasota for many years, and retired in 2000. And I've been working with veterans since, and that's kind of an avocation of mine. I spend a lot of hours a week working with my veteran friends and doing things for our community.
And before we get into the veteran work that you do now, let's go back a little bit. And what did your MOS finally become after you got out of the Syracuse University and went to Japan?
They actually put me in intelligence.
That's what I thought, yeah. And what area of Japan were you?
I was in northeastern Japan, up on northern Honshu, at an Air Force base called Misawa.
And I was at Camp Zama, which you probably heard of.
There you go.
You heard of that one, all right?
It's more common than you think, Kenny.
Exactly. Wow. Okay, so you had intelligence there, and you were there for 2 years, you said?
I was for just about 2 years.
Wow, excellent. That's a great place to be. During that time, were you able to... Go ahead.
Because the opportunity that the Air Force provided, of course, I had my work, which had to be done, but being in the Air Force, you had the opportunity to really interact a lot with the Japanese culture and get to know the Japanese people a little bit, and it was just all in all a terrific experience. It really helped mature me in a lot of ways, I think.
Mm-hmm. And did you happen to, during those days, it became a famous little phrase called R&R? Were you able to take one?
I was able to take R&R, but we didn't particularly call it that. We would just take our regular leave. I took my leaves in Japan, and that was, time well spent for sure. Oh,
so your R&R was you stayed in country of Japan?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was lucky.
I had the opportunity to go some other places, but there was so much to do and see in Japan that I stayed there.
Yeah. I know. I got to take a good one. I had a question just come in asking, what kind? Can you just mention the kind of intelligence you were in? Was it surveillance, reconnaissance, or paperwork?
It was mostly paperwork.
A lot of paperwork intelligence. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah,
paperwork here and there. Every time you turn around, there was paperwork.
Well, I can understand that a lot, because even in the medical world, we had a lot of time spending on the paper. A lot of time. Those records had to be there. And I was lucky to take my R&R because of my rank. I was able to get on one of the Air Force embassy flights. You probably knew about those.
No, I didn't know about those.
Oh, well, I got to fly first to Philippines, and in the Philippines we dropped into Vietnam for a little while. Vietnam, we then went to Bangkok. Bangkok, we then went to New Delhi, and I waited for the plane to come around and take me back. I did a 3-week stint on my R&R and during my birthday period, so it was quite unique. We're going to be
that is unique. Also, wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll tell you, the most interesting thing about my time in the Air Force, which people almost can't believe this, but I had about just a short period of time before I was discharged, where I came back to the States, and quite a bit of tennis at the time, and the Air Force flew me to a tennis tournament. I had the privilege of representing the squadron, and that's the first time. That's the first time in the 4 years in the Air Force that I'd ever been on an Air Force plane. All the times before that were civilian planes.
Another question came in and asked if you did cryptographic intelligence.
That.
If you did, good. I have no idea what it is, and I'm glad you're not going to talk about it. We'll keep that. We'll keep that between ourselves. We're going to be coming up a little bit on one of our breakaways in just a second. So I'm going to let Alan Vada know that we're going to be coming back and talking with him. And then the three of us will all have a good conversation about the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. And looking forward to finding more sponsors in our area. So anybody that's interested, just let us know. There's very easy ways to get in touch with us. VeteransRadioHour.com. The easiest one to remember and the easiest one to get to our site so that you can be all plugged in. That's VeteransRadioHour.com, which will also be a radio show launching on Veterans Day, November 11th, with the one and only General Dave Grange. We had a show years ago, and it's taken off, and he's coming back. So we'll be right back after this break.
Roll call. We'll be right back after these messages.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
Here we go. Here we go.
You're listening to Roll Call.
Every day. Sign my name on the dotted line.
Sign my name on the dotted line.
Here's your host, Kenney DeCamp.
All I do is a double time.
Up the hill.
Up the hill.
Down the hill.
Down the hill.
Down the hill.
On the hill.
Up the hill.
Up the hill.
Yeah, and after I got off the hill today, I went right to the hot tub, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Please get your pen and paper ready, as I suggested. I'm going to give you another nice hotline for you, especially if you know someone who's just getting out of the service or someone who's been out for a while but hasn't been able to get all the benefits that they really need, especially being able to be schooled. And that's the GI Bill hotline. And you'll find that at 888-442-4551. And it's interesting with the GI Bill hotline, at the age of 63, I was told that I could go back to college again. So, Gene, you might be thinking about that as well. But I ended up getting my certification, 2-year associates as a chef, because I've always been cooking, and so now I'm, I guess, a real cook to a good degree. I like that. Now I'm going to bring Alan Vada in. Alan, are you with us now?
Yes.
Hi, Alan. Good evening to you.
Oh, good evening to you and Gene.
Okay. If you would, start out and tell us a little bit now about, like Gene did, where you were at and how you got into the service, and then what you went into and where you went.
Well, I went back to college after Thanksgiving vacation, and when I came back when I came back for Christmas, my girlfriend broke off with me, and I handled it very maturely. I sulked and walked around in circles and left college and tried to join the French Foreign Legion, only to find out it had been disbanded. So then I scratched a little around to find out what I could do to get me as far away from reality, and I found out about the nuclear submarine Navy, and that's how I went, and a long process to get involved in that program, but I was successful, and that gets me in.
Excellent. So where did you start out at? Great Lakes?
As far as the military?
Yes.
Okay. Whitehall Street in downtown Manhattan with about 2,000 or 3,000 other guys kind of naked, walking around being poked and prodded, and eventually we were all anyway. Those that made the cut went on to the next step, and we went home basically until we were notified what to do next. And I made a train ride from New York to Chicago. Not actually Milwaukee, Chicago, Illinois. That was like a sawtooth across the United States. It was definitely a milk run. And every time I looked out, the ground was going in a different direction. And so it took us like 2,000 miles to cover 800 miles, and wound up in boot camp. And I don't know if you want me to just rattle on until I got to the sub or what at this point.
So you were there in Great Lakes, the naval station there, or Glenview?
Yeah. Yes, I was.
And how long a period of time was your basic? Is 6 weeks like it was for me in the Army?
You know, the number 9 sticks in my mind, but it's so damn long, I honestly don't remember. But I think ours is 9.
And then from the Great Lakes, did you, while you were there in basic or before basic, did you sign up to go into the nuclear world?
Well, actually, from the recruiter, because my idea was, to give you an idea, in the Navy, there's a guy called a fire controlman, and I thought, well, that was going to be a good come out of the service and be an experienced fireman, and you get a good job. But basically, I found out that had nothing to do with fighting fires, and through testing and all, I sort of was persuaded that my leanings were towards nuclear submarines, and more specifically to the guided missiles that were carried on board and the torpedoes on board, and that set my pipeline, and met up with a bunch of guys that were in that same pipeline, and there were some that didn't make it, and then some of us made it all the way through, and schools all over the United States, and then finally one day I wound up in Groton, Connecticut, on board a brand new sub that was still flat metal, that they were actually rolling and curving into hull segments called USS Nathan Hale SSBN 623 boat. And we were actually christened on the day after John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh, and what was your role on that ship?
As I went there with my background was in the electronics and the hydraulics and pneumatics for all the launching systems on board, for whether we launched it vertically, which was the Polaris missile, or horizontally, which was, of course, torpedoes and subrock. So that was my specialty. But the main specialty, when you're selected, you wound up being a representative of the United States government in helping to build a submarine and be an overseer and to note and make sure that the sub and all contracted procedures were adhered to, so that we didn't have a problem, or we weren't going to have problems after the submarine was commissioned and out at sea.
And then when that one, after it was christened, you took off somewhere, or did you stay around the States for a while?
Well, the process is after the christening, then the boat is actually launched. We went down the ways, as you've seen probably in old movies.
Oh, yeah.
And rode this hunk of steel down, and first time the sub actually was would have ever seen water. And then after that, of course, it was muted because the president had been assassinated the day before.
Yeah.
And it was quite a thrill. Even so, it was mixed emotion. And we tied up next to an active pier, and then we finished it was a long process to finish up the submarine to get it really seaworthy. And then we went off to pick up our first missiles in Charleston, South Carolina, which was quite an adventure, taking the sub out, because I conveniently left out the point after the sub was deemed a recognizable submarine and ready to function. We then had to take it out to sea and dive the darn thing and make sure we had no incidents. And of course, it was really a stressful day, because Admiral Rickover was on board, and the one leak we had on board, that entire submarine dripped on him.
You kidding?
No, and actually it wound up being quite a stink, because not to get too involved, there was a certain type of periscope that we had on board that was utilized. It was type 11, and it was utilized for using a very sophisticated submerged sextant, and they did away with it. They came up with a better option, and they had to plug all these holes that went through the whole hull for cables, and lo and behold, they forgot to plug them up with the appropriate long-standing. We actually went to test depth with a couple of what they call DC plugs. Imagine a cone that's made out of wood, and those cones from the exterior was driven into these holes, which should have been long ago taken out, and again, the appropriate plugs in there. And luckily, we submerged plus 2,000 feet, and here a couple of chunks of wood saved the submarine from some very dire straits. And it poured all over Admiral Rickover.
Oh, geez. Oh, so are these some of the stories that are also in your book, or these are special little bit of knowledge?
That particular one is actually in the book. Excellent. And believe me when I tell you, the book could be a multi-volume, because I bounced around, and there were tens of thousands of stories that could have included, and a lot of them did not make the cut. But there is a lot of stories still floating around in my head, and I may write that sequel. And by the way, the book is real stories from a nuclear submariner, but there's a secondary portion of that title, and it's Once Upon a Time, This Ain't No Bullshit, and I hope I didn't offend anybody.
Oh, no, FCC, or I don't know, Mark will have to find out what our insurance is going to say about it now or something.
Oh, jeez, I forgot we were that involved. Okay.
Yeah, talking about
cut out the rest of the stories.
Yeah, talking about being that involved, the Radio Veterans Broadcast Network has, with its radio and its blog and its internet connections, Mark tells me that we're running on about 7 different platforms now, which also include Spotify and Amazon. I believe iHeartRadio's in on there, and of course we're coming right now from the blog talkradio.com, and these are ways to listen to our show every week. I'm on Sunday nights. On Mondays we have Patrick Scrogan. He was a helicopter pilot, went through a bad crash and got pretty well broken up, and so he's got a wonderful show called Wounded But Not Broken. Good motivational energies for what people have to do after they come back and how you go through what you do. And when we come back after this next break, we'll be talking to Gene and Alan about after they got out of the Army. Well, we know Gene went a little bit into the legal world, but I want to ask them about if there was a VSO that helped them then. Are they involved with any VSOs now? And then I want to know what they're continuing to do. I know the book alone is helping veterans who get the book from Alan. Just the little bits that I've plugged in on there, it's very unique. So in just a few, we'll be back after this break.
Roll Call will be right back after these messages.
Attention, looking for semi-drivers nationwide. GTS Transportation of Burr Ridge, Illinois is looking to hire or partner with experienced CDL holders in every state. If you are going to drive, why not drive for the best? Whether you are driving solo, as a team, or as an owner-operator, GTS is looking to add you to their rapidly growing company. Become part of one of the most respected, driver-friendly, and successful transportation companies in America, where drivers are treated as royalty. Contact us at gtscarrier.com. Again, gtscarrier.com. Or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. We would love to help you, which in turn helps everyone. GTS is an equal opportunity employer.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
You're listening to Roll Call. Here's your host, Kenney DeCamp.
Yep, we are just rolling along, and I'm happy to say I'm here with an Air Force veteran, Gene Jones, and a Navy nuclear submariner veteran, Alan Bada. And I just want to ask both of you for a quick yes or no answer. When you got out, was there a VSO that you got involved with to help you? Gene?
No.
Alan? Okay.
No.
All right. And do you know what a VSO is now?
Oh, yes.
Gene? Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
And Alan, are you involved with any VSOs?
No. Well, that is, I'm a long-standing member of the retired submarine vets and 50-year Holland Club member. So, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we know that for people that are just learning VSOs, as I did recently, they are actually just stand for Veteran Service Organizations. And then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what organization is there that could be a service to me? And then I find out it's the American Legion, the VFW, the Disabled American Veterans, the Paralyzed Veterans, AMVETS, Vietnam Veterans, Iraq. I mean, it goes on. They say there's about 100 different recognized VSOs. So let's talk for a few minutes. I'll start with Gene. If you could tell me, how did your transition work to get you into school? And I would imagine when you went back to college, it was with the GI Bill's assistance.
It was with the GI Bill, and that was, of course, very helpful because basically my college was paid for thanks to good old Uncle Sam, who helped me through college in the Air Force, and then after I graduated, and I had enough credits. I was really lucky that I graduated from undergraduate school and then had hours left over, so I almost made it through law school before my benefits ran out. So it was really a terrific opportunity for me, which I was fortunate to be able to take advantage of.
Excellent. And Alan, when you got out, did you transition right back to school, or where did you go?
Well, I want to throw in a little interesting thing. I forget exactly what year it was, but I decided that I wanted to separate myself from the service, and I got out and I became a staff engineer at Vitro Laboratories in Silver Spring, Maryland, and they had a lot of government contracts, but specifically about the launch systems on board nuclear submarines. And I was fat, dumb, and happy there. But one day, I get a phone call, and it's the Navy actually trying to lure me back in. And it seems that at that juncture, the service, especially the submarine service, they were growing, but they couldn't get. This is a point of bragging. They couldn't get the quality personnel that they needed to man all the new subs that were being built, and so they were digging into trying to get some experienced guys that left the service back, and they worked very hard and diligent, and after some great offers, I became prior to leaving the service, I became a naval instructor. So they wanted me to come back and continue in that vein, and there were other gratuities, and I didn't want to bore you with all of them, but it was enough to where I thought I was fat, dumb, and happy. I came back, and I was glad I did. And to jump ahead, when I retired, I did not jump into anything aligned with VSOs at all, other than being a member of the retired veterans organization for submarines, and I really went almost 180 degrees. I wound up in buying and renovating old houses and flipping houses. Then I opened up a pawn shop, and it goes on and on. I'll shut up.
Is that in the book too?
Yes, it is. But my editor is sitting here
okay.
reminding.
Yeah, keep it limited so we go buy this book. And Gene, let's get into now what you're doing with veterans. Tell us a little bit about this great organization that I even belong to.
Kenny, I'm so fortunate because I work with a terrific group of people that we operate two veterans outfits right now, Florida Veterans for Common Sense and Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund. And we take on a lot of projects, and if I'll take a couple of minutes here and just tell you about a few of them. The main thing that we're doing right now with Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund is we recognized several years ago that climate change was a national security threat. And one way to combat that from some research that we did was to plant trees. And one way to plant trees most effectively so that they sequester more carbon, which is the primary thing that trees can do to combat climate change by taking the carbon out of the air and sequestering that carbon in the wood of the tree and the roots, but also in the soil, which that's where the scientists tell me a lot of that carbon, when the trees transpire and take in the carbon, a lot of it ends up in the soil. So we planted a microforest here in Sarasota in cooperation with several other groups. Sarasota County, which allowed us to use the land to plant the microforest, the Rotary Club of Sarasota Bay, and START, Solutions to End Red Tide. And we just had the first anniversary of that microforest just yesterday. We had a nice celebration, which we really enjoyed. And we're planting, our goal is to keep planting these microforests and to make them an example so that people can see how they work and how beneficial they are to our communities. And there's another one being planted here in Sarasota November 6th, and that'll be planted at Stony Brook. So if someone wants to volunteer, they can look on our website and check that out and volunteer to help plant some trees, which is a wonderful thing to do. With our group, we also help veterans directly. We're not a certified social work outfit, that type of thing, but we can't leave our veterans stranded. And so when a veteran comes to us, sometimes with the other social service agencies in town, they can't move quite as rapidly as we can because they say they have obligations for paperwork with grants or with the government, et cetera.
Yeah.
And we can sometimes move a lot faster than the social service agencies to help these veterans. And that's one thing that our group does very gratifying. And it also, it's so good for some of the veterans. Just to give you one example, last year, we helped a veteran at the Stand Down in Sarasota, which we started probably 7 or 8 years ago, and we've been a sponsor of that Stand Down ever since. And at that Stand Down, we met a veteran who was down and out, had some substance abuse problems, but we started working with him, helping him out, helping him find a place to live. And now he's turned himself around. He's got a real good job. He's supporting himself. He's in housing. And better yet, the funds that we advanced to him with no idea that they would ever be paid back, he has paid back that money. So
wow,
we can help
nice.
more. And, I mean, isn't that a wonderful story? I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. So those are the type of things we do. And Kenny, we're so active. We do so many things. If I could take about 2 minutes and tell your audience about some of the things that are coming up, and maybe they can participate with us.
Exactly.
On November 5th, we're participating in a Veterans Day breakfast, and it's a Kiwanis benefit, which will benefit this year Operation EcoVets, which is a farm program, an urban farm program for veterans, which our organization started about 6 or 7 years ago, and we transitioned that to separate 501c3. We'll be participating at the Stand Down in Manatee County on November 6th, and these stand downs are important because homeless veterans can be in touch with the social service agencies that can help them get off the streets. We do a lot of things that are just fun, too. On November 11th, Veterans Day, we'll be participating in the Sarasota Veterans Day Parade. And after that, we'll have a picnic for our group, which is always a lot of fun. Our meeting's coming up November 8th, and we're having an expert on climate change speak to our group, Dr. Terry Root. And she is actually is a Nobel Prize winner, so it's top quality information that we'll be receiving at that meeting. And I mentioned the planting the microforest on November 6th, but then on February 5th, mark this down, Kenny, this is really important. Every year we celebrate the birthday of Tom Paine. And most people will know that Tom Paine is one of our founding fathers of the United States. Sometimes people say he's the forgotten founding father, but he was the individual that wrote Common Sense, which gave us the idea for Constitution, and he was the one with his forward thinking that gave us the idea that we could be an independent country and not tied to Great Britain. And so he gave us that idea and a lot of other things. And he was a veteran. And George Washington actually called on Thomas Paine to raise the morale of the troops on the retreat from New York down to New Jersey. And Tom Paine wrote those famous words that start out the crisis papers, "These are the times to try men's souls." So that has to be celebrated as veterans. We have to celebrate the birthday of Thomas Paine. We have a good party every year. It's a fundraiser for the projects that we do, like the microforest. That's the fund that it went into last year to benefit our microforest projects, and that'll be the same again this year. And so that party is always something to look forward to. And every year we make an award, what we call the Thomas Paine Award, to somebody who's made a special contribution to our community or to the nation. And so this year we have some terrific Tom Paine Award winner lined up. I'm not going to tell you who that was, but the quality of the Tom Paine Award winners are really high. And last year, as an example, our Tom Paine Award went to Lieutenant Colonel Vidman.
Oh, that man, yes. Great person. Let me break away for a little bit, and we'll come right back, but I got a few questions for you as well on this stand down especially. Thanks. Okay. I'm here with Gene Jones and Alan Vada. I'll be right back after this break.
Roll call. We'll be right back after these messages.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
Here we go. Here we go.
You're listening to Roll Call.
All right, I believe we're back now. Gene, I got a quick question before I go to Alan. I'd like to ask you, wouldn't a macro forest be better than a micro forest?
Yes, a macro forest would be great. In fact, and some of the experts, one of the reasons we got interested in planting trees was because some of the experts said that if we could plant 1 trillion trees around the world, 1 trillion trees net, that would perhaps neutralize the carbon that we're putting into the atmosphere, and we can hold our own and not have to worry about sea level rise and increased intensity on hurricanes and all those kind of problems that climate change may be causing. But of course, 1 trillion trees, that's out of the question. But then we happened to see some research that was done by a Japanese botanist, Akira Miyawaki, and Miyawaki determined that if you planted trees closer together and also provided a good carbon base for those trees to get started, they could sequester carbon at a much faster rate and a greater quantity than if you just planted trees like they would be typically found in the average forest. And so we're trying it here in Florida, and I'm proud to say, as far as we've been able to find out, we're the first organization to try this technique in Florida. But these microforests are very efficient, and I encourage people to go to our Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund website, and you can see pictures of this microforest and read about them a little bit. And if we can expand these microforests and have them being planted all around the country and make them successful, nobody ever tried it in Florida, and so we've had some challenges. There's no question about that. But if we can make them successful, we're going to have a dramatic impact, because Florida, as living here, we're at high risk from what can happen with climate change, and that risk is avoidable if we take action and do something about it. And that's why those of us with Florida Veterans for Common Sense, we like to work hard, and we're active and get things done. And it's just like we're saying with helping these vets. Sometimes with social service agencies, they just can't move fast enough. And when somebody has an emergency and they need to need housing for a night, we can help them. We don't have to file 2 inches of paperwork to get that done. And,
what's your goal? How many trees do you see that you want
with
to
this
plant?
first microforest that we planted, it has 250 trees plus, and so it's about a third of an acre, something in that size. And the next one that we're planting at Stony Brook, November the 6th, will be a little bit smaller than that, but the tree density is going to be greater. And so we could try little experiments like that as we develop these microforests. There's going to be one down in Venice, and the plan is to do 2 of them a little bit different, the way the carbon is put down to get the tree started, which is basically cardboard and wood chips. And so we're going to test whether the forest does better with the cardboard or without the cardboard, and perhaps with the wood chips, without the wood chips. So we have some PhD scientists. We're really fortunate in Sarasota. We have really some experts in this area, and they're helping us with that and collecting the data, because to do something like this, we believe it works, and we've seen the research where they've been planted other places, but we don't really know that it'll work in Florida until we collect the data and get that analyzed. So that's what we're trying to do.
Do you participate in the, I think it's called a carbon green footprint, and they have an offset for that? So
that's called carbon banking, and we're working to make that an official carbon bank. We don't want to get into the situation where we're actually trading on a formal carbon market. That's probably beyond our scope at this point. But we do it informally, because we know with our little microforest that we planted at the celery fields in Sarasota, it's going to sequester over 30 or 40 years over 1.5 million pounds of carbon. So, yes, wow. People can set off their carbon use by making a donation to our group, and then we can use that to plant more microforests. And that's the idea.
Can you tell the listeners where they would go to make that donation?
Yes. yes, they can go right to Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund, and there's a donate button there, and there's several choices that you can make. The one that says SURF would be the one that goes to the microforest, and that stands for Sarasota Urban Reforestation. And the reason that we named it that acronym is because we partnered with several other groups to do this first microforest. And so that's where that donation would be marked. You could also make donations to help Afghan refugees or just help veterans in general. So you can designate where you want your funds to go if you donate to Florida Veterans for Common Sense Fund, which is a 501c3, so it's fully qualified for tax deduction if you otherwise qualify.
Thank you, sir. I want to hit Ellen up for a question. Ellen, what is it called, a crash dive? Is it a belly flop of a submarine? Are you familiar with that?
Crash dive is what you have all of a sudden there you have some activity on the surface. Somebody's coming towards the sub, and because you're very vulnerable, you go into crash dive mode. You literally vent out all your ballast tanks and pump out as much water as you possibly can at the same time from other tanks to get you negatively buoyant. So, and of course you have a positive headway going. You go down on all your plane surfaces, and that's your crash dive.
Have you ever been in one?
Quite a few, yes. Quite a few.
Are they fun?
Well, one didn't work too well. We wound up bumping into a Russian submarine, and I do believe it's long enough. It's been declassified. And back in the mid-'60s, if somebody remembered, the New York Times had a great spread on a limping a Russian nuclear submarine being towed from somewhere off Spain back to their home port in Russia, and they monitored it every day until it was back in their harbor. So again, we were all right. We lost a couple of ballast tanks and the oxygen bank and some high pressure air. But we managed to finish out our patrol. We didn't have to come in because of degradation to our deterrent patrol status. But it was crash dive was definitely part of that incident.
Now they used to give incentive rides to celebrities, and they quit doing the crash dive as a part of that about 7 years ago when. I can't remember who it was. They ran into a ship when they were coming up.
I sort of remember it. The specifics I do not. Truthfully, after I left the service, there were a lot of things. It was cursory. I would be interested, but I never locked it in. I have to admit, my memories that hold true are things that I personally experienced, but I don't remember that particular incident well.
The one last question is, what is the most amazing memory you had on a submarine that you can talk about? Well,
the amazing one, I hate to say it was, and I'm choking up because I lost a very good friend on board a submarine. We had an oxygen generator, picture bringing in seawater, distilling it and having pure water, and then this machine would miraculously break the molecules down and pump the hydrogen overboard, and we'd retain and store the oxygen. And in this case, the hydrogen became a leak internal to the machine, and a very good friend of mine went to troubleshoot the alarm, telling him that he had a hydrogen leak somewhere. And when he got to the machine blew up, and an explosion plate smacked him upside the face and flipped him over, and it hit the back of his head, landed on a relief valve, a high-pressure relief valve, and he succumbed to the injuries and bled out in the machinery one area all the way through the missile compartment until we got his body in a surgical area that was built in or could be built into the mess decks, and tried everything, and unfortunately Jimmy Augustus Snyder was his name, and we had a difficult. We had to finish the patrol, and we had before that patrol was the first time we had this package, opened it up, and it was burial bags, and we said, what the hell are these about? And lo and behold, we brought them on board, and we wound up using one, and anyway, I'm choking up. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Well, I thank you for that story, and my deepest condolences for your friend. I do know that a lot of people who I've talked to about subs always say Das Boat is the most realistic movie about submarines, not Hunt for Red October, not for any of the other ones. But you agree with that, Das Boat?
Das Boat. I love the book. I love the movie. The beauty of that was we've all been indoctrinated into the American side of the story, and if you rewatch it, think about from the German submariner, and that's how what I did when I got involved in my first exposure to the book and then the movie, and it is accurate. It is very good. But as far as for the stateside crowd, Red October. You watch Red October, and I sat on the edge of my seat because it was my life. It was everything that they went through, except for, of course, the mayhem. Was exactly the way we operated, and the noise, the sounds, and the words. It was all accurate.
Well, Ellen and Gene, this is the conclusion of our show. Thank you very much for being on our show. This is Mark Eli standing in for Kenney DeCamp. He's listening. I can actually hear him, but he can't hear that we hear him. So thank you for listening to our show. We'll be back next week. This is Roll Call, and we're out.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening. Join us every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. On the Veterans Broadcast Network, this is Roll Call.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life, like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.